What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live, presented by Bet Online here on a Monday night. The playoffs are underway. The stream is going live a little bit late as the Kings-Warriors game ran long, and that was a phenomenal matchup. 4 days where there are playoff games, we're probably just going to go live right after the conclusion. If a game concludes at 9:45, that's probably how we're going to do things over the course of this playoff run, especially because this has been a great start to the playoffs. If the rest of the playoffs are like this, Eric, it's going to be a ton of fun. Some great basketball, some intriguing storylines, some upsets. Parity is alive and well in the NBA, and we're going to talk about it. But before we jump into things, first, Eric, how was your day, man?
It's not going too bad. How was yours?
It was good. I went to the gym, got shots up, got a rec championship tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And
nice.
Then, building out stuff. Things. You got your mailbag out, so if anybody hasn't watched that, go check it out on the main channel. I dropped a ramble yesterday talking a little bit about Dame's comments. I'm sure you touched on them in the video, Eric.
Not too much. Maybe a little.
I didn't see many questions. I was surprised. I saw questions about Jeremy Grant's high fashion instead, which was funny. So I had fun making the thumbnail with that. But yeah, so a couple good banger videos, and then we're going to hop into player reviews coming up soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to the content on the main channel. And as we speak, I believe, last I checked about 30 minutes ago, we are 7 subs away from 8,000. I just really want to reach 8,000, man. I'm looking forward to reaching that milestone. It's been a struggle as this team has struggled to get to that milestone. But, I know big round numbers are arbitrary or whatever, but I think it's pretty cool to see an 8K, so I'm looking forward to that, hopefully coming up in the next week. But before we jump into the stream, we got to thank our sponsor, which is, of course, Bet Online. You can get in on all the craziness that has been the NBA playoffs so far with the promo code BetOnline. They got live scores, parlays, live betting, game info, and more. Over-unders. You can get in with different types of action, different types of betting. You can pick the game spread, which, of course, we did all season long with picks against the spread. Congratulations to Eric for winning that championship. But you can also bet in the middle of the game. I mean, if you can bet in a bunch of different ways. Parlays, you can bet on player stats. Lots of fun action over there on BetOnline with the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a 50% reward bonus. Thank you to them for sponsoring this edition of Blazers Uprise Live. Okay, Eric, we will take questions later and talk with the community later. I always like off-season Blazers Uprise live streams because we get to interact a little bit more with you guys, chat, and I appreciate all of you who make this community great. But before that, we got to talk about this playoff action, Eric, and I'll let you pick where you want to start.
I think
because there was a lot of chaos.
We got to start with the Draymond thing. I think the Draymond Sabonis flagrant foul / ejection.
So I didn't actually see it. I only heard about it because I watched like the fourth quarter, basically.
Just take a pause right now. Go watch it real quick.
Okay.
You have to know. I think there was about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter or so, and maybe a little less than that. But
was it in the fourth quarter?
I thought it was in the fourth quarter.
Must have started watching right after it. Yeah, it was in the fourth. Yeah, I tuned in literally right after this.
Elias with a $2 donation. If Draymond is the needle moved, I will be mad. So Sabonis goes to the ground. And Draymond starts to run, and Sabonis kind of grabs his leg. And then Draymond very much just, like, I think he was trying to play it off like he was just trying to get his foot out of there, but he definitely stomps down on Sabonis's rib and then fully puts all his weight on it and jumps off his body. It's just really weird. But, I don't. Have you seen it now? Or are you still...
I'm watching it, and I just don't know what to make of it. I'm trying to figure out what to make of this.
Yeah. So what I think happens is Sabonis grabs his foot, and I think the minute he grabs his foot, Draymond feels like he's justified with giving him the business back. And I think in Draymond's mind, he was right to do that because he grabbed his foot first. Um, so yeah, I mean, it. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to suspend him, but he got ejected from this game, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either way. I don't know if it's suspension worthy or not, but you can definitely see why Draymond did it. It's just there's no place in basketball for that kind of stuff either. But I also don't like that people are saying that, oh, Sabonis's was unintentional and Draymond's intentional. Like, you can't say one's for sure intentional and the other one's not. So Sabonis shouldn't have grabbed his foot either.
I'm just watching this on replay over and over and over again. Are we sure Sabonis did it on purpose? Maybe I need a different angle.
I'm just saying you can't say you know for sure what one person did, but know for sure that the other person
Honestly,
did. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not 100% sure that Draymond necessarily did that fully on purpose. Like, he could sit there and make the argument that he, like, didn't have his balance on one leg and, like, put his other foot down out of instinct for not having his balance. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. He could make that argument that he just didn't have his balance, and that's what him putting his foot down was, and it wasn't intentional to stomp on him, right? Like, I feel like Draymond's was on purpose, but I'm not 100% sure. I feel like Sabonis's was less likely on purpose, but I'm not sure either. That's why I've sat here watching this on repeat over and over and over again, because, like, I don't even know what to make of that. Both guys could have did both things on purpose. I could see, you know, in freaking fairy tale land where neither guy was trying to do anything to either guy, and it was, you know, just kind of a weird play. Like, Draymond's foot got caught up, and he accidentally lost his balance and stepped on Sabonis. I don't know. I have no idea what to make out of that. That's such a weird play.
A few minutes before this play, Draymond saved the ball and was kind of stumbling out of bounds and sticks his butt out and bumps into Sabonis. And then they called a foul on Draymond. Golden State challenged, and it was overturned as, like, incidental conduct. So, like, they had been kind of doing stuff like that earlier in the game too. So,
and I see GJ Vega said the way Draymond smiled and galloped to the locker room kind of showed to me it was on purpose. He wasn't surprised when he got thrown out. I mean, okay, yeah, it was probably on purpose. It was probably on purpose.
Tori, the whole time they were reviewing it, Draymond was standing there staring at the crowd, just yelling at them, just screaming at the crowd. Like, oh, there was some guy in particular, he called him an F and P word, and and then you heard him say the S word on stream too. Like, he was just yelling at this fan in the crowd. Like, he's crazy, man. And you can't control him when he gets like that either. He's just something else was going to happen if he didn't get taken out either.
Okay, so, like, I'm just starting to think. Naturally, I just start to think about Portland, and if he gets suspended next game and they lose this series in 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, and, you know, this stuff happened with Draymond, and it's like the season started with Draymond punching Jordan Poole in the face, and it ended with Draymond stomping on Sabonis' chest and maybe getting suspended, getting ejected. I mean, that probably lowers the likelihood that he gets brought back in Golden State. Maybe. I mean, it's a situation where they lose in the first round. You have to look at making changes to the team, right? The thing is they've either been in tank mode, we're going to get a top pick, or we're winning championships. We're getting to the finals at least. So it's never been like, oh, well, we're a playoff team that lost in the first round. We're going to have to reshuffle things. They haven't been in that position since their dynasty started. It's either been they've been really bad or they've been in the finals. Like, they've won 18 straight Western Conference playoff series.
Yeah, they've never lost a Western Conference playoff series under Steve Kerr.
So, if that happens, and, like, this stuff's happened with Draymond, there's definitely a chance that he doesn't go back. There's definitely a chance that they look to reshuffle things, and they look at him and his antics and say, okay, well, it was a good run, Draymond. You helped us win a lot of championships. Thank you for that, but...
Well... On top of this, did you see the new thing that came out about being in the super tax for 2 out of 4 years? Did you see
No.
that today?
No.
I don't know how this is going to work. I think this is ridiculously, insanely stupid because how do you deal with picks that have been traded and like most good teams that are in the tax have a bunch of future picks traded anyway. But the penalty for being in the tax 2 out of 4 years, the
Has to do
super
with the
tax,
picks.
your pick automatically moves to the last pick of the first round. How does that work? So, like, why wouldn't you just trade all your
What?
future picks and then go into the tax? Like, you know what I mean?
What?
Yeah, I know. It's just weird. Like, and so like all the picks, like, let's just say Phoenix, for example, owes Brooklyn all those picks, right? So why would they care if their pick is like 20th or 30th or whatever? Like that, it doesn't make any sense to me.
You what? So I mean, how can you can't punish Brooklyn? Because
Right,
that's
right,
punishing Brooklyn. Is it
right.
just like I
Exactly.
think it would have to be on picks that aren't traded because you have to have a pick every other year, right? So it's like that pick that you have every other year is
Hmm.
end of first round, right? Like it would probably be in lockstep
Uh,
with the Stepien rule, no pun intended.
yeah. Well, but how do you like, so if you don't have a pick one year, that means your pick the next year is automatically 30th without even playing the season? I don't know. It just seems weird. Like, how,
Yeah, just like if you have a first round pick
see,
that year, it's automatically 30th, and it would probably not apply retroactively. It'd probably apply for the future.
but like, this is just, to me, once I saw that rule, like, I was already starting to feel this way. I just felt like they just really wanted to crack down on teams that were spending or trying to win championships by going as far into the tax as it takes. And I think they just took it too far, man. I think there's so many rules now that are just like, really. And now, like a team like the Blazers, even if Jody or they got an owner that wanted to pay for that, like, so now, you,
I mean, is that a bad thing for us? Like, it only. I feel
well,
like it could only
uh,
work out good for us.
well, there's all these restrictions about being in the super tax, and the super tax isn't that much further above the regular tax. So, it's only like 17 million or something. So, like,
I
let's,
mean, that's still a decent
but,
amount above the
but okay,
tax
but
with the cap going up.
let's just say the Blazers this offseason trade for like OG and Claxton or something, and they both give them raises on top of re-signing Jeremy this year. Then they're like 20 million into the tax. They're so screwed. Then I don't even know if they'd be able to
I
keep both of them.
I actually, just depending on how it applies to ticks that are already traded or however, I actually, believe it or not, I like that rule because if you're paying the super tax, almost like 90% of the time it's for a contender anyway, and that pick's going to be at the end of the first round anyway. So I mean, what's the difference? But then it basically doesn't allow a team like Golden State to tank when they're paying the super tax, right? Like, oh, Steph's out, and Clay's out. We're just going to tank and stock up on young players. And then when they're healthy, we're going to be back to a contender and winning a championship. But we're going to have all this young talent. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only situation it would apply, which is an outlier, basically. So I don't even think that really changes much. It's just kind of weird. But basically, this is just the closest thing they could get, probably, to a hard cap.
Yeah, I mean I understand the hard cap, but see this is another point that I've been talking about this for years, since before I knew you or since the Supermax became a thing. That penalizes the Blazers though. And here's why. Dame is making a Supermax, right? So his percentage of they're getting penalized for keeping Dame when his contract is 35% of the cap,
How?
and because it's a higher number. So if you keep your guy on a Supermax, you're paying a higher max salary. So you have less room between the Supermax than a team that signed like the Lakers who just signed LeBron in free agency, they're paying less to LeBron than the Blazers are to Dame because Dame was loyal. So I feel like that it's like actually the opposite, and it's like going to hurt small market teams that keep their players.
I mean, we're talking about what has even when they did pay, was Portland ever $17 million over
I'm
the
I'm
tax?
I'm just saying like I wish they would fix that to where if you kept your own players, like it's like the minimum salary, for veterans. So like when Dame's making 60 million, it should only count as 30% of the cap instead of 35 against the
I
salary
mean,
cap.
I agree that like the supermax should be like extra money they can give the player that's not accounted for against the salary cap. But I think in regards to the super tax, like the only way teams should be above that consistently is if they have a contender. I mean,
So
and it was like that, and I feel like it was like that before. Like teams weren't going to pay $20 million of tax for a team that wasn't a contender. And if you're a contender, it makes it a little harder to make yourself a super team, which I like. It makes it a little harder to consolidate for like an all-in trade on one player and then be a super team because you can just round out your bench with buyout players. So I don't know. Like, I don't think it hurts Portland because has Portland ever been $17 million over the tax without a contender? And if so, that probably isn't even smart.
okay, let's just play this out. Okay, Sharp becomes the star. Like I said, they either trade for someone that's expiring in the next couple of years, or they keep the draft pick. That pick becomes a star, and 3 or 4 years down the road, you're having to pay two more young players or something, like because we're contenders. There could easily be a point where they have to just flat out dump a good player just because of the cap situation. I don't really like that as much.
Why would they have to though? Like what would they have to do that for so that they wouldn't hurt in terms of the new rules? Like what specific rule do you think would cause them to do that in this hypothetical?
Well, there's all these trade restrictions now. There's all kinds of rules about if you go into the super tax.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that means they have to like if they're contenders, they don't have to dump somebody so that they can gain salary in a trade, you know what I mean? Like and that player's outgoing salary would count for a trade anyway to make it easier to pull off a trade in the super tax than compared to shedding their salary for nothing. So I don't know. Like
if we trade for Giannis this summer and go into the super tax because we re-sign Grant and all this stuff. So you're saying what? That's fine to just get screwed for 4 straight years or however more years?
I mean, I don't think we'd get screwed because we'd have Dame and Giannis and, Grant, and we still wouldn't even automatically be in the super tax with those three. I mean, it depends on other contracts on the roster, but, and it depends on who you trade out.
Yeah. SXKJX has another rule that I saw today, and that's if you are not at the salary floor at the beginning of the season, you do not get luxury tax payments. So,
yeah, so just try
the Spurs would have missed out this year as well. So,
yeah. Andy Marchant said it just limits the acquisition tools available. You can still use second round pick and vet minimum exceptions, right? Well, you can't sign buyout players, so I don't know if that applies to the offseason with just signing vet mins, but then it would be a hard cap no matter what, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know exactly how that's going to work with vet minimum exceptions. You still have a second round pick, and that's the thing, in regards to like, it puts your pick at the end of the first round. If you're in the super tax with like Dame and Giannis, well, and Grant and whoever, guess what? Portland's first is going to be at the end of the first round anyway, so that doesn't matter to me. The toughest thing is that if you do want to switch up that team, like say you wanted to trade Grant for a better piece or something with whatever remaining assets, you would have to take back less salary in a trade. So it just makes it harder to build upon that.
There was some other, I'm forgetting, but there were two other things that made it really bad for teams in the super tax that I saw today. I'm trying to remember what they were.
chat if you can help us out. Who's tweeting them? I can look on Twitter.
Well, there was a bunch of people tweeting, and then Woj and Shams were retweeting, and yeah. They also
Is that what they're calling it, the super tax?
Yeah, well, it's the second tax apron technically, but there's also, I mean, we talked about this rule before. It wasn't new today, but the pick 7 years from now becomes untradeable as well, so we lose that option.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going into the super tax, you're probably, can you trade that in a trade that gets you into the super tax, or like how does it apply? Like if you're already in, or if you're getting any of those
yet.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's like the rules now. If at the conclusion of the trade you're in it, you can't trade it.
Honestly, I just look at it as like first world problems, because if you're in that situation, you're probably a contender. You know what I mean? Like, so it makes it harder to make your contender like a world beater, is how I look at it, which I don't mind. The
non-taxpayer MLE went from $10.5 million to $12.2 million.
Wow. And that's a trade exception basically too.
And the taxpayer one didn't increase. So
that's interesting.
It's almost double.
Huh. Yeah, I'm looking at Woj. I'll look at Shams, because I know stuff was tweeted out this morning. I just didn't really read it. Room MLE increases 5.5 to 7.6 million, so that's more than the taxpayer MLE. That's interesting. Or is that like the same?
I think it's about the same.
So basically the taxpayer mid-level exception doesn't count towards the cap, is essentially how that's going to work for the most part in practicality. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what the other things were, because I'm sure there might be something that's a little over the top, just from what I've heard. I don't think it's anything too over the top.
Elias had a $2 donation. If Draymond is the needle moved, I will be mad. I already read that out, but I wanted to read it again.
Shout out to Elias. I mean, okay. Well, let's talk about Draymond. We've been talking about CBA. We can go back to... Okay, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to read Antonio's donation, too.
Let's read it after we finish talking about Draymond. Thank you, Antonio. We'll read it in a sec. Okay, Draymond's, like, out of control crazy. I still can't get past the fact that part of me wants craziness on this Blazer team. Because I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I feel like at times it's just like we don't have anybody with any sort of edge to them at all. And it drives me kind of crazy at times. And it's like we have nobody that's going to get pissed off when we're getting absolutely punked. And I don't like that. Like, there's times where I feel like we just don't have any sort of competitive edge. We don't have enough competitiveness from guys other than Dame. And it's like I see Draymond do this stuff, and like that's over the top. I don't want anybody on this Blazer team stomping on anybody's chest, doing the Ndamukong Suh, however you say his name, where he's like pounding the football player's head into the turf. Like, I don't want any cheap stuff, dirty stuff like that. I do kind of wish we had a little bit of craziness on this team at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree that you need those tough, crazy guys that don't take crap and stuff like that. My worry with Draymond is that he's now possibly, his antics going back to 2016 with the nut kicking stuff basically cost them a finals. And then, that you see this, there's been other examples too. It's just like, there's a difference between tough, crazy, competitive, a little out there, and just uncontrollable craziness. And I think Draymond kind of crosses that line sometimes. So it's tough to know.
But we are talking about a guy
we do need that.
We are talking about a guy who, with his antics and play, wins or loses finals. I'd rather be talking about guys on this
sure.
team
But, I mean,
winning
he also
slash
cost
losing
me.
finals than never making a finals. You know what I mean? Like, I get that. But also, he's helped them win championships. Now, obviously, a big part of that is Steph and whatnot. But in the end, it's like, okay, well, we talk about upside, right? The upside with Draymond is like he's a great defensive piece and pass that like could help us win a lot of games. The downside is he's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So it's a high risk, high reward.
And he's old now.
Yeah. So maybe the reward isn't as high, but it's like the thing is we'd probably never get him if he didn't have these antics, right? So it comes down to the conversation we've always had, and it was the conversation we had around drafting Shaedon Sharpe in last year's draft. It's like Shaedon Sharpe was high risk, high reward. And we talked about how like this team is mediocre. We need to take some risks, some high risk, high reward risks, and hope that they pan out so that we can raise the ceiling of this team.
Or
That's kind of how I view Draymond.
Or Draymond just needs to sign here for the MLE and say, screw the Warriors, I'm going to Portland.
Yeah. I mean, then he can get suspended, and at least we only use the MLE on him. I mean, the last guy we used the MLE on played like 15 games and then tried to ruin our franchise with a grievance, so anything is better than that.
True.
So, he's not the point of attack defender we need. I mean, he's such a phenomenal team defender that it would help address the symptoms of not having a point of attack defender. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's such a good passer, system player offensively. Like he's just like the perfect glue guy on both sides of the floor. If you could get him and get like a really good point of attack defender, I mean, like idealistically, you would find a way to get Draymond and you would trade Anthony Simons and multiple first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. And you'd have Dame, Mikal, Grant, Draymond, Nurkic.
Yeah. Well, Chris says if Green does not pick up his player option, it'll be to pursue a big bag. He is not signing anywhere for the MLE. Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly being facetious here. But I don't know. Like, I can't see a team paying him more than that. Like, I don't think a team's giving him $30+ million.
I mean, what are the teams with cap space? That's what you have to look at. And what are they going to spend their cap space on?
I mean, I could maybe see the Mavericks doing it. That might be a good spot.
Yeah. I mean, they already took the risk with Kyrie. I could definitely see them taking. But I mean,
but if Kyrie resigns, they can't.
But like, what's the problem with Luka? Is he can't play off the ball? What, you're gonna bring in Draymond Green to fit with Luka? Like, Draymond Green works because Clay and Steph are phenomenal off the ball. So like, they could just run off screen after screen after screen, and Draymond's just gonna dime them up or hit the screen, or when he rolls off, slips the screen or whatever, and that's their system. The thing is in Dallas, you can't run a system like that. So if they signed him, I don't think he'd really fit there. Portland, Dame can play off the ball. Mm-hmm. That's like the one argument where you could, if you wanted to say that Luka hasn't surpassed Dame yet, that's the one argument you could make is Luka doesn't play off the ball anywhere near as well as Dame. So like, can he actually truly, win a championship? I know he made the conference finals, but can he win a championship without being able to play off the ball, because you're basically going to have to funnel everything through him? I mean, he might be talented enough to do it at some point in his career, but I don't know. So that's the thing, is getting a Draymond wouldn't really help Dallas. It would help them defensively for sure, but offensively...
I mean, despite everything you just said, I could still see them signing him.
Oh, absolutely.
But
will they have cap space, though?
If Kyrie bounces.
I mean, if Kyrie bounces, they got other problems.
I don't know if the Lakers can get cap space, but that's pretty much it, I think. In terms of like good teams, there could be teams like OKC, as mentioned in chat, that could, try to speed up their recovery or their rebuild process. But
see, like OKC isn't the type of team to take a risk on Draymond's antics, though.
I mean, I'm just saying there could be a team that we're not thinking about.
Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, after the stuff that's gone on, I'm kind of wondering if, maybe it is possible to get him on a full MLE.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's the MLE, he'd probably sign with the Lakers. Yeah.
Yeah, because he wants to play with LeBron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely think people were asking, is he one of the needle movers that Dame mentioned? Oh, absolutely. Like Dame would have him on his very short list of players that he would want to come here if he could make it happen. I think outside of maybe Mikal Bridges, Draymond may be number one on that list, or number two, I guess.
See, I wouldn't rule out Draymond willing to come to Portland because of Dame.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that could be a play this offseason, because I think it would come down to, okay, would Golden State pay him the MLE or more? If so, he's probably back in Golden State. But are they tired enough of him? You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like he'll just end up going back to Golden State. They'll pay him like a 1 year, $15 million contract.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be like, okay, you gotta calm down. You can't be pulling this stuff. I still think he ends up back in Golden State.
Yeah, the only thing, because he has that player option, so he could leverage, or he could just accept it, and then they might have to trade him.
What's his player option?
It's like $27.6 million.
Oh, Draymond has a player option for $27 million?
Yeah, that's what we started off this conversation by
by
talking about this, and then I read Chris.
I mean, yeah, he's just. Well, I mean, I don't even know why we're talking about him signing anywhere, because he's just going to accept that, right?
Well, I could.
It'd be crazy not to.
He could pull a Chris Paul and basically say, I'm leaving for nothing, or I'll pick it up if you trade me. Yeah, so he could do that. But he's crazy enough. This is the thing about crazy people. You want crazy. Crazy would be Draymond thinking he's not going to, like, I'll see how the Warriors do without me. I'm going to not pick up my option. I'll get that money somewhere else. And then just like opt out, thinking he was going to easily. Some team will obviously want his services for more money than that, and then none of those offers come, and then he has to settle for less or whatever. I could definitely see that kind of situation.
DJ Vega has a comment that makes no sense. He's like, yeah, I think he uses it as leverage. Dame will tell Draymond there's a good contract extension in Portland. I mean, that's not how that. Okay. But there's CBA rules that will govern that. They will only be able to give them the MLE. So what good contract extension?
He's saying the option. He'll leverage the option to pick it up to get traded to Portland, like Chris Paul did, like I just said. But what DJ Vega? Are you confused?
I just don't understand where. Okay, I get what he's saying. Sorry, I'm just thinking.
So, what Chris Paul did?
Yeah, he leveraged Houston.
No,
or leveraged the Clippers to get to Houston.
Chris Paul had a player option that he was going to decline, and it was thought that he was going to just sign elsewhere and walk. So he went to the Clippers and said, "You can get something for me. If you trade me to Houston, I will pick up my option and you can trade me." So like that's what Draymond would have to do in this situation. But what DJ Vega, I mean, I know you've presented ways around this, but I still don't think it's really realistic, because the whole reason why Golden State would move on from Draymond is because of this super tax and how much money they're paying in super taxes. So they're not going to just then take Nurk and Nas and a bunch of stuff to match salary back and be right in that same position with worse players. So they definitely would have to find another team. We'd have to pay a premium both to Golden State for Draymond and to another team to take all those contracts off. And OKC is just not going to use their cap space on Nurkic and a salary dump. They have enough first. They're not going to be like using that for a first round pick from us or whatever. Like it just like they don't. OKC wants nothing to do with Nurk, most likely.
Well, here I figured out why it didn't make sense to me, because this is what the situation would be. Draymond goes to Golden State and says, "I won't pick up my option and I'll leave." Right? And then he tries to leverage his option to get traded. The thing is Golden State would rather he decline his option and leave
right, yeah,
than
maybe.
him pick up his option, and trade him somewhere where they have to take back a bunch of salary. So it's like, how would Draymond have any leverage, and how would Dame come into play there to help Draymond leverage Golden State? It just doesn't make sense.
The only way that would make sense, I mean, if they got just picks or like young players back that weren't, it was to a team that didn't have to give up much salary, but no one's going to do that.
Nobody's going to do that for Draymond at $27 million. That's the problem. Is like Chris Paul. It was like Chris Paul walks for nothing, or we can get back everything we got back from Chris Paul. In the Clippers' perspective, when Chris Paul got traded to Houston, guess what? What they were getting back from Houston was better than just letting Chris Paul walk for nothing. The problem is the alternative for Golden State is Draymond walks, or you trade Draymond for stuff. The stuff is probably not worth it because they're going to duck the super tax. They don't want to be in the super tax for mediocre players. They don't want... I mean, they've been able to make hay with Kevon Looney at center on a cheap contract. They're not going to want to pay Nurkic $16 million. They're not going to want to pay Nas $7 million. They got Kuminga. Like, why would they want Nas? Nas wouldn't play.
DJ Vega always says that other teams would take him, but that I think that's completely unrealistic.
He says they have no tradable contracts. Well, the thing is if they're in the super tax,
he's talking about OKC. He's talking about OKC.
I can't keep up with what he's saying. OKC is a perfect match for a 3-team trade. Okay, I missed that part. They have no tradable contracts. I think they'd love Nurk because they need a starting big man and contracts to match for whenever they use those picks in the trade for a star. I mean, they're going to have Chet next year.
And they have draft and free agency this year.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry. I'm trying to keep up with what he's saying because it's just not adding up to me. I think they'd love Nurk because they need a starting big man. Yeah, no. I don't think they'd want Nurkic just $16 million. They're going to have Chet next year. They're going to potentially be able to draft a big, trade for another big that's cheaper and younger. That fits their timeline more.
They could also use their cap space to trade for someone without having to have a contract if they have.
Exactly. So... If you're relying on OKC to make a Draymond trade happen because you think OKC would love Nurk, that sounds extremely optimistic and not realistic. So this whole conversation is why I don't think Draymond's realistic, Eric.
Mm.
Is because there's no like logical path. It might happen somehow, but like the path to getting Draymond, there is no path that makes complete sense.
Well, the other thing is, too, I mean, we mention this every time, but we have it tonight, is that would also require both the Golden State Warriors and the Blazers, who hate each other right now, to get together and be creative and find a way to make this all work. And I just don't see that part of it happening either.
Yeah. So I am not counting on Draymond whatsoever. Okay. Not counting on him whatsoever. Shout out to Antonio, $5 donut, says, what separates the Kings from us? On paper at the beginning of the season, we had similar talent. Is it just coaching? Thank you, Antonio, for a $5 donut. Well, I mean, Mike Brown is phenomenal. There was a reason me and Eric were asking for the Blazers to hire Mike Brown as a potential option back when we still had Terry Stotts. People would always ask us, like, well, if you want Stotts gone, who would you hire then? Who do you want to replace him? And we'd be like, honestly, Mike Brown would be solid. And people would be like, Mike Brown, he sucked. You want Mike Brown over Terry Stotts? Blah, 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 blah. Well, look at Mike Brown now. He's coach of the year, or going to be. And look at what he's doing with the freaking Sacramento Kings. He gets there and turns the Sacramento Kings into a playoff team, and they're up 2-0 against the defending champs. The defending champs that have essentially the same team that they won a championship with. They even brought back GP 2 weeks. So, it's so funny. It's so funny seeing Mike Brown do this well, man, because he was an assistant coach for Golden State for 6 years, 2016 to 2022. His philosophies changed. Some of the stuff when he was coaching it for Team USA, when Dame was in Team USA camp, some of the stuff that he supposedly told Dame was the type of stuff that we were asking for.
Yep.
Mike Brown's a phenomenal coach.
Mm.
He's turned himself into a phenomenal coach. He's like the exception to the rule in terms of retreads, because a lot of retreads stay stuck in their ways. He evolved with the game. He's phenomenal. So, a big part of it is coaching. I think if we had Mike Brown, maybe we're in a different situation right now. But also, they're just a little bit more competitive defensively and a little better offensively. Because they just have key role-playing scorers. I mean, like, you got Sabonis and Fox, right? But then you got a bunch of dudes that can hit threes and do a little bit off the dribble. Monk, Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, right? Like, Monk and Kevin Huerter are huge for them. Harrison Barnes, right? And it's like none of these guys are great defenders or anything at the NBA level. Like, they're not a great defensive team. But all those guys make them an absolutely lethal offense because you got a pick-and-roll tandem that is very skilled. You got good lead guard in Fox, good big man in Sabonis. He can pass, finish inside, etc. But then everyone else, 2 through 9, is a threat. I mean, Trey Lyles in game 1 like came off the bench and hit a bunch of big threes for them. Imagine being able to just bring a big off the bench and he's just going to come in and just knock down like 4 threes and like give you a huge shot in the arm. That would be insane for us, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have anybody like that. That's the biggest difference, is the role players.
Well, this leads back to why I'm starting to get upset with the comments in the direction that Dame wants us to go in. Because, going into last offseason, right, the Kings had, Fox and Mitchell, Sabonis, Trey Lyles, I'm missing Harrison Barnes.
Sure.
That's basically was their core heading into last offseason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Blazers heading into this offseason have a core of, assuming they re-sign Grant, Nurkic, Dame, Anthony, Sharp. On paper, that core is better than the Kings heading into last offseason, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree? Or very comparable at the very least.
I think it's comparable.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Kings add Kevin Huerter. They add in a trade, so they make a decent sized trade, right? And then they use their draft pick number 4, right around the range where we're going to have a draft pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they make a great MLE signing in Malik Monk, and it takes them from the 12th seed or whatever they were last year to the 3rd seed, and looking like they're going to beat the Warriors in the playoffs. So, like, I don't think there's this magic thing where you have to absolutely go one route or the other or whatever. Like, I think the Kings showed that you can still draft another player. I mean, Fox and Sabonis are like 26 and 25 respectively. And I wasn't comparing Sabonis to Nurk. I'm saying the overall level of talent on the team. So, like, but I just don't understand why, because they're set up for a very long run now with plenty of young players that haven't even hit their prime yet. So why can't we just make some really savvy moves and add 3 quality rotation players to an already good start that they have, and go that way? I think we could have a similar jump to that as long as it's the 3 right people.
Here is the difference, though, is we talked about Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, and Trey Lyles. Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles are playing the best basketball of their career. You could also probably make that case for Malik Monk. They bring those guys in, and then they utilize those guys well. Mm-hmm. And that's where Mike Brown comes in. So if we're in the same position and we do the same things, right, I am not as confident of it working out because I'm not as confident in Chauncey Billups as I am in Mike Brown. So that's where the coach comes in, mm-hmm, is being able to, because they have a very clear identity. They're going to run. They're going to shoot a bunch of threes. I mean, Eric, do you know what their adjusted defensive rating ranked? Do you have any idea? Do you want to take a guess? Chat, feel free to take a guess. We're talking about a team that's probably going to beat the defending champs. I mean, they're up 2-0, knock on wood, right? But they're being competitive against the defending champs. If you're able to be competitive right now against the defending champs, when they have the same team, you could probably consider yourself a contender, okay? And we always have these baselines where, like, the defense needs to be here for this team to be a contender. Well,
I know. I don't know what their adjusted one. I know their regular defensive rating was like 25th or 26th or something.
Their adjusted defensive rating is 25th.
Yeah.
The thing is, their adjusted offensive rating is first.
Right.
So their adjusted net rating is 8th.
Mm-hmm.
In today's NBA, if you're able to be like a top 8-9 team in adjusted net rating, there's enough parity that you can probably have a chance. Now, I think Golden State is obviously a lot. I don't know, for whatever reason, they're just not as good this year. Like
on the road, especially. So we'll see
on
what
the road,
happens.
especially.
And
We'll see what happens if the Kings have to face like Denver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we also have to see like as the series go on. I mean, it's traditionally faster paced teams tend to get slowed down at some point in the playoffs. So we'll have to see if that happens as well.
Yeah, but like their offense is phenomenal because they got these good role players that can shoot threes, play off the ball, and then also make things happen when the ball ends up in their hands. And they're all threats, and they're coached well. So the thing is I don't know. Like we talk about the Blazers needing defense, but Denver, their adjusted defensive rating is 18th. At this point, they're the favorite in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Their adjusted offensive rating is 5th.
But that's why I don't think the Blazers are that far off, because and that's goes back to coaching probably, is because if you had defensive schemes where you were just, kind of average on defense, like at the beginning of the season, right? Versus, terrible on defense or league worst defense for stretches of the season. And so I just feel like they're not that far away because the offense has shown that they could be a top offense. They were the top offense for a stretch in December. There was a top offense for a stretch at other points of the season. And they had big leads as well in so many games. That's why I think like I think Dame's a little overreacting to the collapse of this season and then them asking him to tank or sit out and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it has to be like trade everyone for veterans or whatever. I still think this kind of process could work out if they make the right draft pick and make just a couple of really good signings, and have an 8 or 9 man rotation where you're not relying on guys like Nas or Keon or Knox or Cam Reddish. Trendon Watford to be something they're not ready to be yet. And or you're hoping that they're going to turn into something that they just – you shouldn't have to rely on that. You need players like the Kings got, players that they identified that would fit their system and take them to another level and did. And until the Blazers actually – do that, I just feel like it's tough to say this can't work because they still had over half their rotation was project guys or guys that we knew weren't the best fits for, this backcourt and all that kind of stuff. So I just don't understand why the Blazers can't do that. And that's why I get a little frustrated with Dame's comments. And, but at the same time, I understand his comments. Like I would want to win too if I was in a situation. I think he's just being a little short-sighted there.
Well, here's what we should root for then, because Dame's watching the playoffs. I mean, of course, but Eric, if the Clippers, we haven't talked about the Clippers. They beat the Suns in Game 1.
Yeah,
the Suns with Kevin Durant. The Clippers without Paul George. Okay, they beat the Suns in Game 1. Now this series could definitely turn in the Suns' favor. I kind of expect it to, but if the Clippers are able to take the Suns to 7 games or just be competitive, like, actually show like, oh, we can beat these guys in a series, even if it doesn't necessarily happen. I mean, that's what you hope Dame sees.
And the Kings
right?
beating the Warriors, yeah.
I mean, the Nuggets don't have another all-star other than Jokic. If the Kings beat the Warriors, like, that's what I hope Dame sees, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we just need better role players. Because if we just held on to double-digit leads, or at least like half the double-digit leads we had, and then didn't tank, we're probably a 6 seed. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the playoffs.
I'll take this a step further. Sign Bruce Brown instead of Gary Payton. We're a home court advantage team. He played every game except for a couple at the end when they were already the 1 seed. would have improved our defense, would have been available from the beginning of the season, would have helped our rotation and our depth issues. Players wouldn't have fatigued as much, and we would have likely prolonged the hotter stretch for a little bit more, and we would have had a set rotation the entire year with a quality role player who does, like we were talking about with Monk and Trey Lyles and stuff like that, knows his role, doesn't try to be a star and do that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that's the difference. And he signs for the tax MLE. So if we offered him the same contract we offered Gary Payton, we're probably talking about us as a 4 seed right now and playing the Clippers or whoever without Paul George and you know what I mean? Like this is the frustrating part to me is like it really could be that simple. And I'm not saying that would make us a contender yet. We still probably need a big trade to consolidate some of those other players that weren't working out into something. But that's the difference between having to tank another season and whatever. But, you know, at the same time, if we get Wembanyama, none of this matters because it was all worth it. But short of getting Wembanyama, it sounds like Dame doesn't want to do any kind of thing other than trade everything for like win now players. So, yeah.
But like, here's my thing for Dame is, okay, well, if we trade like the Knicks pick for Dorian Finney-Smith, is that like going in the direction Dame wants, or is that not enough? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, obviously, you need to make probably another move or two after that, but it's like if we get players like that on this team, is he okay with that?
See, I think that's the type of move he wants in addition to several other moves. So I don't like Dorian Finney-Smith is not on his list, but he does want those type of players in addition to getting stars and stuff. I just think it's kind of unrealistic with the amount of contracts we have to match. So, yeah.
I mean, how much does Dorian Finney-Smith make?
It's like 12 or 13 million. So we can match with like Nas, Keon.
Or we can use the MLE maybe.
Yeah. It's really close. I think he might make a little more too much for the MLE. I think he makes closer to 13, and the MLE is like 12.2.
See, that's for her. It'd be nice to have that Wiseman contract, especially the Wiseman asset in general. God dang. Yeah. But like,
because the Nets, the Nets would probably take Wiseman.
We valued seconds in that trade, but then we trade 2 for Matisse Thybulle. But it's like, bro, Matisse Thybulle is not playing for the Kings tonight. Matisse Thybulle doesn't see the floor tonight. Drew Eubanks doesn't see the floor tonight. Bro, they're not even playing Rashawn Holmes. Rashawn Holmes is a better Drew Eubanks. Mm-hmm. Like, you look at all these guys that play in our rotation. Justice Winslow, even if he is healthy, you guys think he would play for the Kings tonight? Ain't no way. But we just sit here in Portland and try and convince ourselves that, like, oh, this guy can be a good role player. They don't actually get good role players for us to be excited about. So we have to sit here, and half the fan base, I always fight back against it, and then I'm Mr. Negative, but half the fan base just sits here and it tries to convince themselves that this crap that we get for role players, you know, and it goes back multiple years. Mario Hezonja, Evan Turner, like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nick Stauskas. We always get these crappy role players. Half the fan base tries to tell me and tries to convince themselves that this is a good role player. Just wait. And then they're not good enough. And it's like, that's what I always look at in the playoffs. Is like, would this guy from our team be playing for them? Nope. Would this guy for our team be playing for them? Nope. Would this guy? Nope. Okay, well then why are they in our main rotation when we expect to win? That's what it comes down to. And we were good, not because we had an extra star, because we had good role players that played a specific role and were versatile defenders, and Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless, and this fan base just hated them. Hated them. Like, not all of the fan base, but they got so much criticism. It was ridiculous. But they were huge just because of what they could do on the defensive side of the ball. And then offensively, like, they weren't good, but they could knock down a shot, right? But the thing is, they could defend on and off the ball, didn't gamble. That's the problem with Matisse Thybulle. He can't defend fours. He gambles too much. Like, I don't really like Matisse Thybulle defensively as much as other people do. So that's why I have a problem with him. But we had good role players. But now it's we get a Cam Reddish and we try and convince ourselves, like, yeah, he couldn't play in the regular season for the Knicks, but, like, he can help us get back to the playoffs.
And then Dame's sick of that, too, now. And now is thinking that it's the young players that are the problem. Is when it's not the young players, it's taking a chance on players who aren't good enough to be.
It's just not good enough players.
Yeah.
It's not good enough players.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like if we could get a Keegan Murray, I mean Keegan Murray's starting for the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean he only played 60 minutes tonight and was 0 for 1.
Yeah, they didn't play much in the second half. They went with Davian Mitchell a lot, who was blocking down Curry. So.
But guess what, Eric? When you have a bunch of good role players, if somebody doesn't have it on a given night or the situation calls for a little different type of lineup, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that. We cannot do that because we don't have enough good role players. So that's what it comes down to. Is like, I know it's like, oh, Dame wants a star, and we need to be aggressive getting Dame another star. Let's go get McHale, blah, blah, blah. Like, it needs to be, okay, Dame, if the right trade presents itself for McHale, we'll be aggressive. We'll try. We'll see. If the Bucks somehow lose in the first round, we'll poke around that, and you can talk to Giannis and try and convince him to want to come here. But that's on you, right? Like, good luck, have fun. You know what I mean? Like, they can sit there and say, we'll be aggressive and actually mean it in terms of, like, trying to get stars. But guess what? The most likely scenarios it comes down to, like, okay, this team's ass weighs too much. This guy isn't available at all. This guy isn't available at all. Masai Ujiri's insane and wants 10 firsts for OG Anunoby. So, like, we're not going to be able to get these targets. But, Dame, if you look at the teams that are competitive in the playoffs, they have really good role players. We didn't do a good enough job surrounding you with the right role players. So our backup plan is this. Instead of McHale, maybe you get Dorian Finney-Smith. I don't know how you work it out with contracts and whatnot. Maybe you trade a Nurkic and, use part of the MLE on a center instead so that you're able to upgrade somewhere else. I mean, you just reshuffle the team with the right role players, right? And you do things that way. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the backup plan. And if Dame has a problem with that, like, I would just sit there and ask Dame to try and see that out. And guess what? If a star becomes available at the deadline, when we have Sharp and Ant and, probably another rookie, then we can still be in play for them. That's not a bad path. The problem is the low quality, the low caliber of our bad role players have completely warped the perception of what this team needs to do and where this team is at.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it seems like that might apply to Dame. Andrew Boehm says, hasn't this been the plan for 10 years? When have they actually gotten a bunch of good role players for this team?
I mean, even like the Aldridge Dame teams, those teams had no bench, dude.
No bench.
Yeah.
They would go out and get Steve Blake and Chris Kaman.
Mm-hmm.
Kaman
was like washed.
Steve Blake is just, I mean, I know a lot of Blazer fans have a soft spot for Steve Blake, but it's Steve Blake, man. Those were our pickups.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? Guys, when the 1 year we actually picked up good role players, we went to the conference finals.
Yeah.
We got Rodney Hood. We would not have gotten to the conference finals without Rodney Hood.
Yep. And
well, guess what?
Cantor was huge that 1 year.
Cantor was huge that year.
He came back, but Curry was huge.
Curry was huge. We might have lost the first round because like Game 5 was close.
Mm-hmm.
We might have lost the first round if we didn't have Seth Curry. He was huge in the first round because like Rodney Hood didn't kind of struggle in the first round. Then in the second round, Rodney Hood was phenomenal. That's the thing is the one freaking year this team was just like, oh, well, let's just trade 2 seconds for a guy that can actually play and let's actually make a smart MLE signing and we are able to get a buyout guy. Western Conference Finals. It's pissing me off, man, because it's honestly not that hard. But, like, we've just had incompetency.
Mm-hmm.
And all these, like, let me rant for 20 seconds. All these freaking Blazer fans try to say, you're too hard on Cronin, you just hate Cronin, right? Blah, 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 blah. Like, and then they try and hype up all these guys that are just trash, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people trying to tell me that freaking Cam Reddish is Paul George 2.0. He's not. God, that drives me crazy. I'm tired. I would love to get good role players, and then this fan base can say, oh, this guy's good, and I'll be like, oh, guess what? He actually is. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, And then they get on us when we mention players that we've identified that we could have had somewhere along the way, that we had more money to sign, or like the Bruce Brown example where we could have offered him more money than the Nuggets did, or like Austin Reeves and Lou Dort, who were saying immediately sign them to two ways or something, respectively.
I would have drafted Austin Reeves early in that second round. And I would have said, oh, yeah, it's another guard for us. But, like, if I was a team that needed a guard, I would have drafted him in the latter part of the first round. He went undrafted.
Yeah. I mean, you were all aboard the Rui hype trade train earlier this season when it came out that you could have him for a few seconds, and the Blazers basically they did have a trade exception that could have just absorbed Rui outright. And that after the trades at the deadline, they got under the tax enough to where they wouldn't have even been in the tax, even if they did do that trade. So yeah, it's just frustrating. And I'm not saying any of those guys are the answers, but yeah.
I mean, some of it is you have to have a coach that utilizes guys, right? Like, we have identified Josh Hart before we ever got him, before CJ was ever, thought to be available. We like Josh Hart just in general, right? And then we get him in the CJ trade. He looks phenomenal for, the year that we got him, but then this season just kind of struggled. Just seemed to be mental. He didn't have the right role. But I was still sitting there well, freaking find a starting three then, and bring Hart off the bench because he's one of the best 6 guys in the league. And guess what? He's gone to New York and been one of the best 6 guys in the league, and they probably don't win that game 1, without him.
He's doubtful for game 2, unfortunately.
But, they love him. He's been huge for them.
Mm-hmm. But that's the problem. This offseason, we're going to wish we could trade the 23rd pick for someone like Josh Hart, you know?
Exactly. I made that tweet, and people were like, well, you should find a small forward to start that's 6'8". And it's that's not even what the tweet's about. It's if we could undo that Josh Hart trade, we'd do it in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I know we traded him because of salary reasons, but it's shoot, we're going to be trying to find another Josh Hart with the same asset, and who knows if we get somebody as good.
So DJ Vega said earlier that Dame liked a tweet that said, still want to believe the Blazers were good enough to be in these playoffs with better health, and if they just added another big man or two to the opening night roster.
Yeah, it was an Alex Tam tweet or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Another big, huh? Do you think he had a problem with the Drew Eubanks?
I don't think he had a problem with it, but it's just we knew there were going to be parts of the season where Nurk would miss games, and we needed a reliable backup / then make Eubanks the backup. So yeah,
Eubanks is bad.
Yeah,
Eubanks is bad, bro. He is not in a rotation on a playoff caliber team. There's no way.
Yeah. I really hope they find another person to sign this.
They're going to bring him back. I mean, I just hope they freaking learn. Even if you like the guy, guess what? Our bench did not work out, so just get a new freaking bench and try again, okay?
Yeah.
If you want to bring him back on the 3rd string because he's a hometown kid, okay, cool. And then fans will be mad at you, and they'll be like, ooh, good job. You got him as a 3rd string big when he should be a starter in the All-Star game, and then you can...
I'm so worried about that. I don't think they could bring him back and then make him 3rd string and not play him. I just think they have some weird...
Why not?
Because Chauncey and Cronin have some weird infatuation with him. I don't get it, but...
I mean, well, that's... they could, but they have an infatuation with them. It's if he's not happy being a 3rd string, okay, well, go have fun in China. Go have fun in the G League. Go have fun in a different league. I'm just, oh God. I mean, this year's playoffs have been fun, Eric, but it's also making me realize, okay, our team actually is not that screwed up. But that also makes it that more infuriating because we talked about the role players. We talked about Eubanks not being good enough. I talked about Justice Winslow not being good enough, and I was a hater. I don't hate Justice Winslow. I don't hate certain players. They're not good enough. And it's I try and tell people they're not good enough. And then I'm Mr. Negative, and it drives me crazy.
Every single Blazer fan before the season said that center was going to be an issue, right? Whether you liked or hated Nurk, he was a problem. Whether you I mean, no one like was in love with Eubanks that much at that time. Hometown kid, like you said, so they were fine with him being on the roster, but not one person was sitting there thinking, oh, we are set at center. This team, Corona did such a good job at adding center depth, and we're completely fine at that position. Every single Blazer fan knew center was going to be a problem this season, except for the one person who could have actually made it not a problem. And then now he's talking about, well, I made mistakes or whatever. And like no, I'm sorry, you don't get credit. You don't get credit for holding yourself accountable for something that everyone knew. And then you got these people telling us, oh, you're not the GM, you don't know crap, like how would you know what was available and what was not, and how could you know anything, like you're dumb, you guys are always talking about what we should have done in hindsight and all this crap. It's like, no, every single person, every single one.
I hate when people act like we're saying everything in hindsight, because those of you who watch us consistently know that we're not, or know that I'm not. Like, there was, some hype around Nas going into the season. I wasn't buying it. I said, let's wait and see, because he hasn't proven that he can consistently help this team. He hasn't proven that he consistently deserves a spot in the rotation. It's fine that people disagreed with me not buying the hype. Like, I'm not sitting here complaining about, like, the community and what they said. But, like, almost everybody in chat, Eric, pushed back against that. Almost everybody in chat pushed back against, which I get you guys want to be excited for a season. I want you guys to be excited for a season. I want to be excited with you guys for a season. But it comes down to a certain point where it's like Nas has not consistently put together more than 10 good games in a row. And if he has a good 10 games, he follows it up usually with a terrible 10 games. And when you have a guy that volatile who's like not, his good 10 games aren't so good that you can justify it, you probably shouldn't rely on him being a part of the rotation. Mm-hmm. And like, sure, you give him a chance because, okay, maybe he can break out, but that's why you get enough depth where you don't have to rely upon basically still a complete unknown. Yes. The problem is this team always relies on complete unknowns like that because the other guys they get are guys that aren't good enough to get the job done either.
And that's exactly my problem with the position they put themselves in, with probably having to trade Anthony Simons, because this is a case where he has actually stepped into a role and could succeed. And now we're trading one of those players instead of having the contracts to trade out players that aren't going to be a part of that, because a player like Nas stepped up and proved that he could be that, so we could trade that player when we don't necessarily have that player. I know everyone thinks Sharp is, but I still think that's yet to be determined, at least if we're trying to contend next year or the year after. But anyways, it's just a case where I don't like that we have to trade out pieces that are actually part of the rotation and proven, to get different players that are proven. Like, that's the problem. Like, Nas and Keon, they put way too much faith in last summer. They thought Keon could be their third guard. They thought Nas was going to break out and win that starting small forward job, and then he didn't. And then they thought maybe, somewhere down the road in the season that he would push Hart for that, and then they could trade Hart or whatever. But Nas never stepped up, and then they traded Hart anyway. So I just feel like they put way too much faith in some of those guys. And then even with Winslow, even if he was playing well, he hasn't been reliable, with his health in any season since 8 years ago or something like that. Not that long, but yeah. I'm being,
even if he's healthy though, he's still not good enough.
Right. But I'm saying, even if he was playing well, he hasn't made it through a season in 4 or 5 years. So it's just frustrating. And then this all comes back to the Gary Payton signing, because we took so much crap on that stream about how could you not be excited about Gary Payton, blah, 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 right? And we kept sitting here and saying, because we got hard capped and signed a 6'2" guard. yes, the analytics showed that he was really good at defending forwards or whatever, but we knew we had a problem with too many smaller players, and we needed big length in the front court and at center. And we literally used the one free agent thing we had to sign another 6'2 guard. And on top of that, it hard capped us and prevented us from signing like a minimum center or something like that because we're up against the tax line too. And Jody didn't want to pay the tax. So the minute that happened, Tori and I instantly recognized that and knew that was going to be a problem. And we took crap of it from so many people. Like, this is a great signing. He's a champion. He's from Oregon State. And, like, look how good he is on defense. Like, okay, yeah, how's that working out for you?
Like, this is going to sound... This might sound arrogant. But if we are negative on an acquisition... I feel like we have enough of a track record that you guys should just trust us. Like, it's okay to disagree, but have a reason, you know? Like, people just get caught up in the hype of getting a new player, and, oh, we got somebody new. It's like a shiny new toy. Guess what? At the end of the year, that shiny new toy is in the dumpster. It's in the dumpster. I think I'm right more when I'm negative than when I'm positive. Now, part of that is because it's always right to be negative with this team. That's probably the main reason. But, man, like, I am not negative because I want to be. I just try and look at everything logically. Okay? So, Smog says, that's very arrogant, but you're not wrong. I mean, I'll admit when I'm wrong, like, but I don't know what I've been wrong on in the last year. I was wrong that I had the Blazers at 8. I had the Blazers at 8. That was dumb.
Well, to be fair, if they just make a trade to win at the trade deadline like the Lakers did, the Lakers were the 7th seed. There was barely a few teams over 500 that were, what were the Clippers, like 3 games over 500 or something, 4 games over 500?
I mean, there's parity. It's not that much of a gap. But, like, chat, please. Okay, I will ask you guys. Please tell me if you can think of anything. I'm sure there's been multiple things that I'm just forgetting. What, like, when I've been negative in the past year, what have I been wrong on? Please tell me. I would love to hear what I've been wrong on. Like, I want to have been wrong on. Like, I wish when I was negative, I was wrong. Because I want this team to be good.
Rahi says his 2 favorite MLB targets were Kyle Anderson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Like I was saying to Bruce Brown, both of those guys probably allow us to win, too.
Yeah. Your draft board says SXKJX. Yeah, my draft board this past year wasn't the best. It was not that good. I will admit that. I'll admit that. Hopefully I do better this year. Billups, says Eric Olson. Yeah. Billups is... Well, I was positive about Billups, though. You get what I'm saying? Like, what have I been negative and wrong in the past year?
Stotts. Admit it, finally.
Stotts, yeah. Kieran with the $5 donut says, LMAO, this exact line of logic is why I'm scared that you don't like Jarris that much. Disagreeing with you never ends well for me. Thank you, Kieran, for the $5 dono. Draft is the hardest thing to judge, okay? So, like, I have been wrong on a ton of guys. I've been right on some guys, and I think I do pretty well at the second round. At the top of the draft, I've been extremely... hit or miss. So, and it's not even that I don't like Jarris that much. I just, like, for drafting a guy at, like, 6 or 7, I would like to draft somebody with a little higher ceiling. But then again, as I think about it now, it's like, you see how important role players are in a league that has more parity, and maybe I shouldn't be viewing things that way. A lot of
things.
Exactly.
I just want to say, whoever created a Justice Winslow burner is an absolute moron and can't even spell Justice's name right. But if you're going to create a burner and try to claim you're someone, you might want to spell their name right, because I'm pretty sure they would be able to spell their name right.
Tori, please start being extremely negative about Portland getting the first round this year. Well, wait, if I'm right when I'm negative, you don't want me to think they're getting the 7th pick. Or the 8th pick. Because then that's what they'll get.
Well, I mean, that's not... No matter how negative or positive, nothing we do has any effect on what pick we get.
Yeah. Shout Murray with a $269 Australian dollar donut says, is Watford going to be a Blazer for long? I think he'll be back next year, but we'll see. Not entirely sure. Thank you, Murray, for the dono. But, I mean, my whole thing is, like, just know that if I'm being negative on a pickup, there's normally reasons for it that I think are I try and be logical with. So if you disagree, that's completely fine. Say why you disagree. Have a conversation. The stuff that annoys me is just all the, like, insane, like, you're a hater, you don't like GP2 because he's, you know, like, we come from a place of logic. People think we're emotional because we wear our emotions on our sleeve, but behind those emotions is logic. So just know, even if you disagree, that's absolutely fine. But our negativity doesn't come from a place of just wanting to be negative or trying to be emotional. Plain and simple.
I'd much rather be positive and be talking about playing in the... How much fun would it be right now if we're having a post-game show because we're up 2-0 on the Warriors?
That'd be dope. Yeah.
How freaking cool would that be?
We'd be at 8,000 subs by now. So, you know, like, that'd be awesome. So, yeah, that's basically my whole rant, my whole point.
Yeah, see, I mean, I talked about this on the last few post-game shows we did. This is not a fault of Trent and Watford's, but I just think we need our forwards to be good defenders, and I don't think it can work with negative defenders there. So, like, no matter how positive he is on offense, I still think you're then putting the team at a disadvantage playing him in most lineups. So I wouldn't have a problem if he's still on the team. I just think it's tough to justify the positive of his passing and floater and stuff like that with the negatives on defense. And I mean, it's something he could still improve, I guess. He's just not the most athletic guy. He's not the most lengthy guy. So,
well, here's my question: is how many bigs are playing in the playoffs right now that are undersized, unathletic, and not knockdown 3-point shooters?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because, like, you could make the case, like, Kevin Love's a little undersized and a little unathletic, but he's a knockdown 3-point shooter. He was 4 for 7 last game. How many? Is there a single big that is undersized, unathletic, and not a knockdown 3-point shooter that's playing in the playoffs right now? Because that's what Trent Watford is.
Murray says Paul Reed, but Paul Reed's been really good on defense.
He's not unathletic, though.
He's really good on defense and rebounds. So
I don't view him as unathletic.
DJ Vega says Draymond. I think you should say really good defenders.
I mean, Draymond's like the outlier, but that's the thing. Is like, oh well, the only guy is like an absolutely elite defender who, like, Hall of Famer, like, great passer for his position. And guess what? He's not really helping them right now. I mean, now some of that, you know, we talked about him, but, like, that's the thing is not a plus defender, not a plus athlete, undersized, and not a knockdown 3-point shooter. There ain't no way you can play that guy in the playoffs. That guy will get, like, Trendon will get eviscerated in the playoffs because the playoffs, as we've seen, is more physical. And also, like, guys just play quicker. Defenders move quicker. They get to their spots quicker. Trendon Watford's game, I don't think, translates well to the playoffs. And he's already not a rotation player on the good team in a regular season. So, at this point, I view him as a 13th man. He's the 13th man.
I think he's one of those guys who can step up when you have injuries and provide a role against some situational lineups, things like that. But once again, I don't think if he's your backup power forward next year, I think that's exactly what we were talking about earlier, where we need a little bit better 1 through 9 rotation guys versus.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can go into the season with him being a part of the rotation next year.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you said if he's in. I thought you meant like if he's in the rotation, you need a better 1 through 9.
No,
If he's the
I'm
backup.
saying what we were talking about, how we didn't have a good 1 through 9. If he's part of the 1 through 9, that's part of the same thing of the problem of this year.
Okay.
So we're just mimicking that problem next year, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, I misinterpreted you. Yeah. I mean, he can't. Is there anyone who we brought off the bench to start the season other than Shaden Sharp that you think should maybe be in the rotation next year?
No, I think we should package all of them and get the best. So all of them, everyone other than Sharp off the bench, we could package them all, and it barely. You could keep one of Jabari and Trend in, and that matches OG. So you could, in theory, trade all your bench guys and then just overpay with picks, and do that. So I think that's what they're going to try to do at first. But see, the problem is, out of all the guys that are needle movers or on Dame's list of players that he wants, OG's the only one that those players will match for. So we're pretty much stuck with overpaying for him or having to then talk about different other parts. So yeah.
Here's how I'm looking at this offseason. Obviously, you make a big trade splash and figure it out if it's the right move. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, okay, we have 5 rotation players right now, which is Dame, Ant, Sharp, Grant, Nurk. I think we're going to re-sign Grant. It's also kind of why we have to re-sign Grant. We can't afford to lose him, so we got to overpay him. That's 5 rotation players, okay? We have 3 very clear ways to add 3 more. One is our lottery pick, one is the MLE, and one is a trade, including maybe the Knicks pick, or we open up future picks somehow, and we use like Nas and like those contracts that you said to maybe go out and get a guy making less than like 18 million. You know, who knows who that is? It might be a Dorian Finney-Smith, right?
Royce O'Neal is making 9 something next year. He'd probably be gettable.
Yeah. So, like, that brings us to 8. I don't know how we'd fill the 9th spot.
Well, I have an idea.
What is it?
I call the Wizards right now. We have the normal Gary Payton trade exception that's like 8 something, right? But we also have a very small one for Josh Hart that's like 2 or 3 million that probably will go unused. It's really hard to find players that fit in that. So you call them and hope that right now they're looking at Porzingis possibly opting out to sign a much bigger contract and having to pay Kyle Kuzma the bag this summer. And you get Daniel Gafford right now while he's still under $2 million on a contract and can fit in that spot. And then knowing that he's going to bump up to 12.4 next year, and you get your backup center that way, and then you don't have to worry about the weak free agent class for centers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like, if you can find a way to get Dorian Finney-Smith, there's your starting 3. Okay, 3 and D. Daniel Gafford as the backup center. You got Sharp off the bench as your third guard that can play a little bit of small forward as your bench scorer. Okay. Then you would need to find 2 forwards. 2 forwards to come off the bench.
I mean, if you draft Brandon Miller or something.
Yeah, like say Brandon Miller's one of them, and who knows who the
Thibault, I guess.
You'd have the MLE.
Yeah.
Well, no, you have the MLE. So, like, what power forward for the MLE would you want to go out and get?
Or, like, if we drafted Jarvis Walker, then we could get a small forward with MLE or whatever.
Yeah, let's just say Jarvis Walker, because that's like more likely.
Right.
Okay, so Jarvis Walker, I think
he's the backup
play
4.
Right away.
Yeah.
Could play some defense, hopefully shoot threes well enough. But like you got Dorian Finney-Smith as your starting 3, which I think is a good fit. 3 and D guy, point of attack defender. You got Sharp off the bench, hopefully taking the next step. You got Jarvis Walker, Daniel Gafford, and then you use the MLE on a 3.
Yep.
as a backup plan to like swinging big, depends on who the three is. Like, is there any three out there that you think would make sense?
Um, well, if you didn't give up many assets to get those guys, like, because like I said, maybe Washington doesn't want to fight the tax with their team next year because they don't even know if they're a playoff team. So maybe you get Gafford for a couple seconds or something, and then maybe you got Dorian Finney-Smith for like the Knicks pick or something.
Yeah.
And so you still could possibly free up your picks, lightening the protection and using seconds and stuff. So you could still like try to find a guy and overpay for him. Maybe offer just I don't know.
There's not a ton of great names out there at the forward spots, not gonna lie.
But as I'm saying, like go to a team that has one of those guys that you wouldn't think is available and offer him like 3 future first and I don't know, like a Jaden McDaniels or something. And then
yeah, I mean, like hypothetically, if you could somehow swing some sort of trade for OG with first, and then OG is starting, and you bring Finney-Smith off the bench, if you can still find a way to get him. I mean, like that's. I'm just trying to think like lower than that, but like that's the thing is like if you just find a decent 3-and-D like backup,
Bruce Brown's going to be about.
Bruce Brown. There you go. Bruce Brown. You give him the full mid-level exception, okay? So you got a starting lineup of Dame, Ant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Grant Nurk, bench of Sharp, Bruce Brown, Jarris Walker, Daniel Gafford.
Mm-hmm.
That team has a chance of being like a 5-6 seed, okay? Yeah. It's not all the way to contention, but also we would have said that about Sacramento before this year. So maybe all those guys mesh well enough. I do think you would need with that bench, maybe another scorer.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem with like Bruce.
It depends on Sharp. If Sharp's
yeah, but
yeah,
you need. I just think you need multiple guys that can do like just our 3-point threats and off the dribble threats offensively.
Snacking keeps saying Caleb Martin. That would be another instead of Bruce.
Oh yeah. I mean, Caleb Martin would be nice. A little bit more of an offensive threat. I don't know. Like you just obviously need a balance, but like still that rotation is solid, and then you just go into it like, okay, you still have your future first. If you just trade the Knicks pick for, Finney-Smith, you could, if that team's like a playoff team, like a 6 seed, you could probably go to Chicago and change the protections on that and open up 3 future firsts at the deadline, and you still have Sharp and still have Ant, and you could say to Dame, like, this team we think is good enough. You got much better role players this year, guys that have been in the league, okay? We are still in position. If one of those big swings comes available, we are still in position to make that splash. So the baseline is higher, and we're in position to make that trade with, you got Jarris Walker, Shaden Sharp, Ant, and potentially 3 future firsts at the deadline. Guess what? You're in play for pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. And you also you'd have $12 million for Bruce Brown, 13-some million for Dorian Finney-Smith. So right there, you have 2 guys, $25 million. Let's just say we're trading for a small forward or something, without having to give up Sharp or Jarris Walker or anyone like that, right?
Or maybe McHale becomes available, and at that point, I don't know, you're willing to give up Sharp. I don't know, and Sharp and Finney-Smith and Bruce Brown and first,
right?
Or maybe Jarris for like McHale. So you got Dame, Ant, McHale, Grant, Nurk, and then you still have Gafford off the bench, and then you still have, you have to backfill the roster a bit, but that's the thing is, like, if we're a 2 seed, maybe we don't make that all-in trade because we're, have such we have better role players, and they mesh really well. That's the thing. I mean, Denver, obviously they got Jokic, who's phenomenal and obviously better than Dame, but they don't got another all-star. They just have really good role players, and they all fit. That matters more than ever. Because the offensive talent gap in the league has shrunk, Eric. That's why you have more parity. That's why teams with good role players are being more successful than just super teams. That's why the Clippers were able to beat the Suns in Game 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that needs to be the backup plan. Obviously, if you can get McHale and make Dame happy, and McHale would be great for us, like, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. But that should be the backup plan.
Yeah.
Instead, like that's the problem with last year. Is like, oh, we're gonna sign a guy that's injured and only proven he can play for 1 year in the perfect situation, and then we're gonna go in with Eubanks and Winslow as our backup front court, and we're gonna rely on a 19-year-old rookie who like didn't play in college. You know what I mean? And we're gonna try and win with that.
You also could sign some minimums that are actually good, 10th, 11th guys too.
Yeah, you could always do that, but so. That's what this offseason is for me gearing up to be. Like I know a lot of people are painting it as an all or nothing, but as these playoffs go on, I hope Dame sees a team like Sacramento being able to beat Golden State and like, okay, well, what's the difference between us and Sacramento? Oh, it's not star power. Like, I'd take Dame and Ant over Sabonis and Fox because Dame just separates himself so much from either of those guys. He's just on a different level. It's not star power, actually. Grant, you could make the case, is maybe a better third player than anyone else on the Kings. Like, who's their third best player? Harrison Barnes? I wouldn't say Harrison Barnes is better than Jeremy Grant, right? So what's the difference? Oh, it's fourth.
Malik Monk, but Jeremy Grant should be better than both of those guys, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a conversation. That's the thing. It's like our top three is very comparable to their top three. What's the difference? Oh, it's 4th through 9th. Is a huge difference. Huge difference. That's the difference. So.
Yep. Luis Nunez says, what about signing Yuta Watanabe? He hasn't cracked the rotation much after the trade they made. I mean, that would be solid filler, too.
As like a 10th man, I would love Utah.
I think they need some shooting, like you said. I don't know if it's necessarily scoring, but they need some sort of gravity player that can shoot the ball to space the floor for that bench, and I think that would be a good pickup.
Yeah. 9th man at best, 10th man is probably better because I don't know if you'd want to count on him being a mainstay in the rotation necessarily, but just like a situational guy, yeah, could step in and actually play a specific role well as a shooter and not as bad of a, not that bad of a defender. So anyway, that's my synopsis. I got about 5 more minutes. Shout out to Kieran said, you guys did a very good job explaining this vision here. Someone needs to clip this. Yeah, I just intended to talk about playoffs, but of course it turned into a philosophical talk. But honestly, I have really enjoyed this stream kind of laying out what I'm seeing in playoffs and how that could apply to the Blazers.
All right, so yeah, we can do a tankathon, but before we do, I want to propose a hypothetical to you and chat,
okay.
Tori.
Okay.
All right, so I was Reese and I worked together today, and I was asking him what the Pelicans should do with their whole situation, right? And he said they probably need a more of a point guard, and move CJ kind of back to his role like he was on Portland, where he's not like the main ball handler all the time. So I asked him this question. Blazers get the 2nd pick. New Orleans has 14. They call and offer you 14, a future first, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy for 2. Is that enough for you, or is that not enough? So we get 2 young wings. We still have a late lottery pick and a future pick that we could add to packages for other players and stuff like that. And two really good defenders, and Trey Murphy's obviously a lights out shooter. That's crazy. You got to do a chat poll. I see yes, no way, yes way, no, 100% no, easily, no way.
I'm not going to type the title. You guys heard the man. Yes or no. All right, I'll type the title. So it was if the Blazers got
number 2, yeah.
Would you do?
Because I think those will both fit in the trade exception too, so we wouldn't even have to trade out. I mean, if you want to match salary, we could.
14.
A future first.
2 for Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. 14 and a future first. Yes or no? Okay, there's your question. Jeez.
Because just okay, think about this for a second. Okay, we didn't trade any salary out because we used the TP, right? And you were just talking about rotation players, right? But we filled two of those spots with two wings, which are really both fill a need for this team, right? Shooting and defense. Um, so you get the Bulls pick back with the Knicks pick, and then all of a sudden you have 14, a future first, and could trade 4 of your future picks. So then you'd have 6 firsts you could trade on top of Sharp and Ant and whatever. Like that would maybe be enough to go get a superstar or something.
Oh, it would be.
Yeah. So
absolutely it would be. Like that package. I mean, how is that package not what the Clippers gave up for Paul George?
Mm-hmm, pretty much.
And that was like, and the reason the Clippers gave up so much was because it helped them get Kawhi too. So it was like, oh my goodness, they gave up so much. But like SGA was coming off his rookie year. I don't think SGA off his rookie year is like higher regarded than Shaedon Sharp is off his rookie year. Now, obviously, SGA is a 30-point per game scorer, but dude, like I think with that package, if anybody in the league becomes available and you're willing to give up that package, you probably get that player.
Mm-hmm.
If Giannis becomes available, it's hypothetical, not realistic, but just hypothetically, even if somebody like Giannis became available, I think that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like a team like the Thunder could offer like 14 first, but I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, so we're far. So 8 first. Are you going to be able to get? I mean, you could probably find your way into like an Ant, a Sharp, and a 14 or whatever. I don't know. Like, but that's what it would take. That's the only thing that could be that package off the top of my head. It's like if OKC, But that's the thing too. Is like if you got Philadelphia or Milwaukee and like either one of Embiid or Giannis wanted to leave, I guarantee you they'd want to go play with Dame before going to OKC. And if that matters to Philadelphia or Milwaukee, like that's the thing. You're legitimately in the conversation.
Well,
so
okay.
I would do it. I would do it.
So
I would do it.
So Bob and Weave says I'd still rather have Mikal Siakam with Sharp at 2 and a good MLE signing. I get the scenario, but it's hard to consider it when I feel like it's a 0% chance we get a superstar. So you don't think Ant and 6 first could get you Mikal in that scenario? Like, obviously it wouldn't take that much, but like you could basically match whatever. They could say, no, we're not trading him. And like, okay, well, then we'll offer you 4 first and Ant. And then, no, we're not trading him. Okay, how about 5 first and Ant? At some point, they would have
6 first for Claxton and McHale.
Right, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ant and 6 first. At that point, you could maybe get Claxton.
Yeah.
And if you had a lineup with Dame, I mean, who would you even start? You'd have a 9-man rotation. You'd have Dame, not in order, I'm just like naming guys as they come to my head. 9-man rotation, you have Dame, Sharp, McHale, Grant Nurk, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Claxton. And then, I mean, that's 8. And then you just use an MLE on someone. There, you got your 9-man rotation. And you got length. You'd probably need to add a guard with the MLE, which would be strange to talk about.
You could actually, like AJ says, trade Nurk, Nas, and those 6 firsts for McHale and Claxton instead.
I mean, you probably couldn't get Claxton out of that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But you could get McHale, maybe. If there's any chance to get McHale. They turned down 4 first. Okay, 6 first. But that's the thing. The follow-up move, you'd still be able to do whatever, but also you'd have better... I mean, I can't say no. You know me. I can't say no to Trey Murphy and Herb Jones because I was much higher on those guys than consensus going into that draft. And I remember after that draft saying New Orleans absolutely won the draft because they got Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Like, I remember being so high on that draft for them. And, like, I think I had Murphy as, like, the 10th best player on my board, and he was taken 17th. And it's just like, he can knock down threes, projects to potentially be a good defender, and he's athletic and 6'9". Like, how is he not a lottery prospect? It baffled me. And then Herb Jones is like, he can handle the ball a bit for like a potential lockdown defender who's a decent athlete and has size. Like, I still think Herb Jones has some untapped potential depending upon if he can shoot the ball. You know, like just figure out how to shoot, because he can handle the ball, like move with the ball off the dribble better than people realize. Like, you remember how Siakam came along? Where he was just kind of like a role guy his first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But like couldn't shoot and then kind of popped.
Yeah, Herb's a little smaller than Siakam, but I see your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the same player, but like people didn't think Siakam had the potential he did after a season or two. They thought, oh, he can be a really, really good role player. They didn't think he could be a star. I kind of feel like the same might be true for Herb Jones. It's not likely he becomes a star, but it's not like you're getting a guy that doesn't have sneaky potential. So at the very least, he's going to be a really good role player. I the more I think of it, I can't say no to that. I would do it. Absolutely.
And even though there wasn't a follow-up, you could draft Lively at 14, and then you could draft I've seen some things where like Nick Smith falls into the 20s, or you could draft a guard then, like you said, then that's not off the table. Sasser you could go get. He might be ready to step in and help a team. You
just have a better baseline, good role players, and they're cheap, so Jody's not upset, right? So you still have wiggle room under the cap, and then you still have the means to go out there and make a splash. And those guys are young. Like, it's just a smart trade on a number of fronts. Anyway, I like that hypothetical. You should ask it on Twitter in a Twitter poll and see the results of that. But then again, I'm not sure anybody other than verified accounts can ask anyway, or can answer.
Aeromancer says he is surprised it took you that long to decide, to be honest.
It was just such like, I mean, I've been sitting here like, you don't trade two unless you get like a true star. Like, it's just these playoffs are making me think differently.
Obviously, if you can get McHale for number 2, you probably do that instead.
Yeah.
But
anyway, if anybody has a life advice question, ask it in the next 2 minutes, and we'll be quick with it because I gotta go in the next 2 minutes. I already rolled the tankathon. Let's reveal it. At 14 New Orleans, at 13 Toronto. The order's set now, by the way. At 12 OKC, at 11 Orlando via Chicago, at 10 Dallas, at 9 Orlando falls 3 spots, which means we're probably 8. If we see this, see Orlando at 9, we're probably screwed. Or we're in the top 4 along with the 3 teams below us and actually have the best odds of getting the number 1 pick out of all of them. But at number 8 is going to be your Portland Trailblazers.
Yikes.
I don't even know who moved up.
Washington and Indiana.
And Utah.
Utah again. You're
at
in the wrong.
4, Utah. At 3, Indiana. At 2, Washington. At 1, Detroit. Okay, time to go to Google Chrome. Did anybody have a life advice question, Eric?
I've not seen one, but we did have a Murray $2.68 this time donation. Is there any team that would pass Wemby at number 1? I don't think so. I can't say 100% because I still think the Blazers are the one exception that might consider trading it if they get it. But other than that, I don't think any other team would even think about it for a second.
I can't even attach Chrome, but I'll just tell you what we got on Chrome. Oh, Washington's the first pick, Charlotte's the second pick, Houston's the third pick, Toronto's the fourth pick.
Interesting.
So Chrome is drunk too. Anyway, thank you to everybody for tuning in for this edition of Blazers Uprise Live. We'll be live again on Thursday. Looking forward to that. Could have some live streams coming up this week with playoff watch parties. So you guys can always hop in there on NBA Uprise. If you aren't yet subscribed, go subscribe over there. Obviously, we're going to be covering NBA games, and it's an NBA channel, so I'm not going to be completely Blazer focused, but I'll interact with y'all. Been building coded graphics, coded scoreboard for that. It looks sick. Anything else, Eric?
Oh, thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate you all. Hope to see you back here on Thursday, and look for more great videos from Tori.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And check out the videos the past couple days. They've been good. And with that, we're out of here. Thank you to Bet Online for sponsoring this edition of Blazers Uprise Live. Use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for a 50% reward bonus. And have a good rest of your night. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.